All right, so we're diving into Isaiah 53, 4-5.
Okay.
I mean, you know this passage. You've taught on this passage. You probably preached on this passage.
Absolutely.
But we're really going for like the deep cuts here, the insights that you haven't heard before that you can take back to your church, to your small group, to your Bible study,
Yeah.
and really kind of blow people's minds, you know?
Right.
So we've got interpretations from 3 very different pastors,
Okay.
each with a really unique take on this passage. We're going to kind of break them down and see, you know, what we can learn from each of them.
I like it.
So first up, we've got healing through the cross, confession, asking, trusting from my New Life Church.
Okay.
And this one, as you might guess, really focuses on healing.
Sure.
But it's not like your typical, like, name it and claim it approach.
Right, right.
This pastor really emphasizes the process of healing.
Okay.
He talks about confession, like acknowledging that you need healing in the first place,
Yeah.
then asking God for it specifically. And then, this is the hard part, trusting God's timing,
Oh, interesting.
even when it feels like nothing's happening.
Right.
Now, he uses this really cool story
Okay.
about a church member named Lester who was healed from a leg injury after prayer.
Oh, wow.
He was walking with a cane before, and then after prayer, bam, no more cane.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful story, right?
Definitely.
But what I thought was really interesting was how the pastor connects it to 1 Peter 2.24,
Okay.
which says, you know, by his wounds you were healed.
Right.
But traditionally, that verse is interpreted as healing from sin, not physical healing, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So it's like, is he intentionally kind of blurring the lines there?
That's fascinating, yeah.
And if so, I mean, how do you, as a pastor, how would you handle that with your congregation?
Yeah.
Something to think about.
It definitely adds another layer to the whole conversation.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for a totally different perspective.
I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay, so this one is called Confronting Abuse, Healing Through Christ's Love and Community from Steamboat Christian Center.
Okay.
And believe it or not, this sermon connects Isaiah 53, 4-5 to the experience of abuse.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean,
Go ahead.
it's not just a surface level connection either.
Yeah.
This pastor really digs deep.
Okay.
And his argument is basically that because Jesus himself endured such intense suffering, right? I mean,
Yeah.
including what we might even call emotional and psychological abuse today, he has this really unique capacity
Okay.
to understand and heal those who've been through similar trauma.
That's powerful.
It really makes you think about the depth of Christ's compassion, you know,
Absolutely.
on a whole new level.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either.
Okay.
He actually uses Luke 23.34.
Uh-huh.
Where Jesus is praying for forgiveness for the people who are crucifying him.
Right, right.
It's like a model for how we can begin to heal from abuse. So it's not about condoning what happened, but about releasing the pain and the anger so that you can move forward.
I see. Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Very powerful.
All right, you ready for a wild card?
Let's do it. I'm intrigued.
Okay, this one is called Humilité et guérison, la vérité qui libère,
Okay.
from PCC Paris Centre Chrétien.
All right.
And yeah, it's in French.
So we're going international this time.
We're going global, baby.
All right. I'm excited.
But we had it translated, of course.
Of course.
So
Okay.
this one, it's straight up challenges
Okay.
a common belief about healing.
All right.
This pastor actually calls it a doctrinal error to think that your personal sin
Wow.
can block God's healing power.
Okay.
He's saying, no, no, no. Healing is purely a grace
I see.
given through Christ's sacrifice.
Okay.
It's available to everyone, regardless of their spiritual state.
Interesting.
And get this, to illustrate his point.
Okay.
He brings up the story in Numbers 21, 4-9, where the Israelites are healed just by looking at the bronze serpent.
Okay. Yeah.
He's like, it wasn't about their righteousness, it was about their faith
Right.
in God's provision.
Interesting.
Then he connects this to Philippians 2,
Okay.
where Jesus' humility leads to his ultimate glorification.
Okay.
So it's this fascinating argument.
Yeah.
He's suggesting that, you know, when we focus so much on ourselves
Uh-huh.
and our perceived worthiness, it can actually become a barrier.
A barrier to receiving that grace.
Exactly.
Wow.
So we've got healing through active participation, healing through embracing forgiveness,
Okay.
and now healing is like this pure gift of grace.
Interesting.
3 totally different approaches,
Right.
but all rooted in the same passage.
Yeah.
What's hitting you the hardest so far?
Well, you know, it's funny because all 3 of these sermons are so different.
Yeah.
but they each seem to speak to a very specific context, you know?
Uh-huh.
Like that first one with all the confession and asking God for it specifically, that might really resonate with a congregation that's maybe going through a lot of illness, a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
They might be looking for some tangible ways to kind of...
Yeah, to put their faith into action.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that second one, focusing on Christ's empathy,
Yeah.
that could be so powerful for a community that's dealing with the trauma of abuse.
Right.
And then the third one, all that radical grace.
Mm-hmm.
That could be just what a group that's struggling with legalism needs to hear.
It's like, hey, it's not about you. It's about grace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really highlights how important it is to understand your audience, right?
For
Like who you're speaking to.
Totally.
And then tailoring your message
Yeah.
to really meet them where they're at.
Yeah, because one size fits all doesn't really work.
It doesn't, no.
Not when you're talking about these.
Especially with something as complex as healing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
What about you? What's standing out to you?
I keep thinking about the historical context, Okay. Isaiah was writing this like 700 years before Christ.
Right.
Like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
The Israelites were facing exile, oppression, all kinds of hardship, and then this prophecy, like this glimpse into the future.
Yeah,
It would have been this huge source of hope for them.
absolutely.
Here's this figure who understands their suffering,
Yeah.
who actually bears their griefs and carries their sorrows.
But it's not just acknowledging the pain. It's saying, I'm going to redeem it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's power.
Knowing that historical context just adds this whole other layer of meaning, don't you think?
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Because even though it was written so long ago,
Yeah.
it still speaks to us today,
Yeah.
in such a profound way.
Absolutely.
Like no matter what you're going through, personal struggles, trauma, questions about God's grace,
Mm-hmm.
this passage offers comfort,
Yeah.
challenge.
And ultimately, hope. It's amazing how much depth we can find in just these few verses.
It is, yeah.
But there's more. Stick with us.
Definitely.
We're going to keep going
I'm excited.
with Isaiah 53, 4-5.
All right. As we're talking about all these different interpretations, I keep thinking about that third sermon,
Mm-hmm.
the one from PCC, Paris Sender Chrétien.
The one that challenges the idea that personal sin can block healing.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, what if our beliefs about healing,
Yeah.
especially the ones that tie it to our own worthiness,
No.
are actually holding us back?
It's like we're putting up these walls between ourselves and God's grace.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you think about it in the context of Isaiah 53, 4-5,
Okay.
it takes on a whole new meaning.
Uh-huh.
You've got this figure, the suffering servant.
Right.
He's taking on our infirmities, our sorrows.
Mm.
It's not about how good we are or whether we deserve it.
It's just grace, pure grace.
It's purely grace.
Yeah.
So if we could just embrace that truth, recognize that healing is a gift, not something we earn.
Right.
It could be so liberating.
It's like a weight lifted off your shoulders.
Exactly.
In a world where we're constantly being told to achieve more, do more, be more.
Right. Constantly striving.
Yeah, it's like this radical message of freedom
It really is.
to just rest in God's grace.
And it's interesting because we talked about the historical context, right?
Hmm.
The Israelites were in exile. They felt abandoned by God.
Yeah, like they messed up.
Exactly. They were questioning their own worthiness.
Right.
And then you have this prophecy,
This promise.
this promise of a future where God says, I see you, I know your pain, and I'm going to redeem it.
That's powerful.
It's like this radical affirmation of God's love
His unwavering love.
and his grace.
Yeah, that's good.
And all of these interpretations, as different as they are,
Right.
they all point back to the same truth.
Right.
That healing, no matter what form it takes, is found in Christ.
It's all about Jesus.
It all comes back to him.
It always does.
It always does.
So, thinking practically,
Yeah,
how do we as pastors and Bible study leaders,
right.
how do we take these insights and actually use them?
Yeah, how do we make them relevant for our congregations?
Exactly.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is remembering to be sensitive to our audience.
Mm-hmm. Like we talked about earlier.
Like with those 3 sermons, each pastor really understood their people.
Yeah.
They knew what their people needed to hear.
Okay, so what does that look like practically?
Well, let's say you're preaching on Isaiah 53, 4-5.
Okay.
Don't just go through the motions.
Right, don't just phone it in.
Exactly.
Right.
Really take some time to think about who's sitting in front of you.
Okay.
What are they struggling with?
Yeah, what are their fears, their hopes?
Exactly.
Right.
And then think about how you can frame this passage
Okay.
in a way that speaks to their hearts.
So it's like tailoring the message
It is,
to
yeah.
your audience.
Exactly.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to use stories.
Right, like that story about Lester
Exactly.
that could really get people thinking.
Yeah, it's a great way to make those abstract theological concepts
Yeah, those big ideas.
more relatable.
Right.
You can also draw on the historical context.
Okay.
Remind people what the Israelites were going through when Isaiah wrote these words.
Facing exile, feeling abandoned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how this prophecy gave them hope.
Okay.
It's a powerful reminder that God is always with us,
Even in our darkest moments.
even in the midst of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
we talked about those tough questions.
About healing, about 1 Peter.
Right. Those are important conversations to have.
They are, yeah.
Encourage your congregation to wrestle with those questions.
Okay.
To really dig deep into Scripture.
Because that's how we grow.
Right. It is. Yeah.
It's not about having all the answers.
It's about seeking truth together.
Yeah, I like that.
And another thing to remember is that this passage isn't just about theology. It's about how we live our lives.
It's about putting faith into action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So help your listeners connect the dots.
Between Isaiah 53, 4-5.
And their everyday lives.
Yeah.
How does this passage speak to their experiences of pain and suffering?
Right.
How does it offer hope?
How does it challenge them?
Exactly.
To be better people.
To live lives of compassion and forgiveness.
Yeah, that's good.
And, we can't forget about the power of this passage for evangelism.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a story that can really resonate with people.
Especially people who are searching for something more.
Yeah, people who are hurting.
People who are broken.
It's a glimpse into the heart of God.
A God who loves us enough to sacrifice his own son.
Exactly.
So equip your congregation
Give them the tools they need.
to share this message with the world.
Because it's a message of hope.
A message of healing.
A message of love.
A message that the world desperately needs to hear. It really does. Man, we've really gone deep on Isaiah 53, 4-5, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
From healing to forgiveness to spiritual freedom.
Even evangelism.
I mean,
Yeah, it's amazing how much this one passage covers.
it really is. It's like this whole...
Like a microcosm of the Christian faith,
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are some pastors and teachers out there
Uh-huh.
thinking, okay, this is all great,
Yeah.
but how do I actually use this?
Right. How do you make it practical?
Exact.
That's the question, right?
So let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay, I like it.
What are some tangible takeaways from this deep dive that pastors and Bible study leaders can take back to their congregations?
Okay, well, I think one of the most important things is to really understand your audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we touched on that before.
Like, remember those 3 sermons we talked about?
Yeah, each one was so different
Each pastor really tailored their message
to their specific congregation.
to their specific congregation. Exactly.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
So let's say you're preparing a sermon on Isaiah 53, 4-5.
Okay.
Don't just dust off your old notes.
Right.
Or, rely on the same old commentaries.
Really dig deep.
Exactly.
Okay.
Take some time to really think about the people you're speaking to.
Okay.
What are their struggles?
Their hopes, their fears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, how can you present this passage in a way that really connects with them?
Okay, so for example, if I'm working with a group and they're really dealing with a lot of sickness,
Right.
maybe I focus on the theme of healing.
Exactly.
Or if they're struggling with forgiveness,
Okay, yeah.
maybe that's the angle I take.
Right, you tailor it to their needs.
Okay, I like that.
And don't be afraid to get creative.
Right.
Remember that story about Lester?
Oh, yeah.
The guy who's healed from his leg injury?
Yeah.
That's a great example of how a personal story can really bring a passage to life.
Make it real.
Make it real, exactly.
Okay, cool.
And, you can also bring in the historical context.
Oh, yeah.
Remind people what the Israelites were going through.
Facing exile, all that hardship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This prophecy would have given them so much hope.
Right.
And it can do the same for us today.
Okay, I like it.
And, don't shy away from the tough questions.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, those are important.
That whole 1 Peter 2.24 thing.
Right. Is it about physical healing or spiritual healing or both?
Right.
Those are the kinds of questions that can really get people thinking.
Yeah, get those wheels turning.
And, it's okay if you don't have all the answers.
That's about the journey, right?
It is. It's about wrestling with these ideas together.
I like that.
And another key takeaway is that this passage isn't just about head knowledge.
It's about living it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about how we live our lives,
Okay.
how we treat others,
Right, right.
how we respond to suffering.
So help your listeners connect the dots.
Between Isaiah 53, 4-5,
Yeah.
and their everyday lives,
Their everyday lives, yeah.
how does this passage speak to their experiences of pain and loss?
Okay.
How does it offer hope?
Right.
How does it challenge them to live differently?
To be more like Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
And we also talked about the power of this passage for evangelism.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is a story that can really resonate with people who don't know Christ.
Yeah, it speaks to something deep inside all of us.
It does, that longing for healing,
That longing for wholeness.
for something more.
Yeah, and it points us to Jesus.
It does. It points us to the one who can truly satisfy those longings.
So as pastors and teachers,
Yeah.
we need to equip our people to share this message.
Exactly. Give them the tools.
Give them the confidence.
To go out and tell the world about the love of Christ.
Because this is a message that everyone needs to hear.
It really is.
So wow, what a deep dive. It has been, yeah.
We've really explored Isaiah 53, 4-5.
From all angles.
Uncovered some hidden gems.
Absolutely.
And hopefully equipped our listeners with some practical tools
I hope so.
that they can use in their ministries.
Yeah.
So keep digging.
Keep exploring.
Keep sharing this incredible message.
Until next time, deep divers.